So if I just go into perspective mode and zoom in here, you can see we've now got the kind of bar that we want. But the only thing is, we've got this, because of the way it worked out here, it's actually given us a shorter piece of metal here. What I'm going to do at this point is, I'm actually going to skip ahead and use some of the techniques that we're going to, be showing you in the second DVD in the series. I'm not really going to explain what I'm going to do here. This may, be a little bit voodoo, but it'll be explained very clearly in the next DVD. But it shows you the sort of multi-stage process that you can go through when you're modeling. Using just the modifiers here and using the primitive is not the end of the road. You can take that further using mesh editing. So in this case, I'm going to use Edit Poly as the mesh editing media. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to select all of the vertices beyond this vertex here. And I'm actually going to go to the left view and I'm going to select both at the same time, both of these bars. So I make this, exactly the same modification on both. And I'm just going to delete those by pressing delete and go into perspective mode. Now, I can't really see what I'm doing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually delete this. Actually, I'm going to move this cube here until it's here, which shows me the original end, but actually gets it out of the way. I'm going to delete this object here. And we've still got this cube in here. I'm going to delete that too. So now you can see we've got this bend here, which is nice. And this would actually be very difficult to bend and model in this way just using the poly tool. So using the modifier in this case is perfectly valid. It's it's exactly what I would actually do if I was working on a commercial job. And I'm just going to go back in here. I'm going to select the border here. And I'm going to say cap it. And I'm going to do the same here. Cap this. I'm going to select both end faces. And then I'm just going to extrude these out using the extrude tool until it's the right length. And there we are. That's basically what we need. And in doing that mesh editing, you saw how quick and easy it was. I got rid of all that extra tessellation and I've made this object much neater. And as you can see, it was a very quick and easy modification to make. But obviously, to get to this point, we had to go through this process of creating the box, bending it, mesh selecting, bending, mesh select. Well, we didn't really need the mesh selection. That was just in there for neatness sake. But then on top of that, we did some edit poly modifications. Let's just finish off by, as I said, replacing some of these elements here with slightly better elements. Let's go in and create a chamfer box. And I'm just going to roughly make this into, just a very raw object. Align that. That's fine. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to shift copy this over here. I'm going to copy and I'm going to align that to this box here. Just going to say okay about that. Then I'm just going to move this by eye roughly into position. And let's see what we've got here. This has actually got its pivot point at the base, and I believe this one has its pivot point down here. I've actually moved the pivot point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this into position by eye till it pops out the bottom there. And it should be in the center because it has a central pivot point. I'm just going to change the fillet until it's a little bit, more angular. And then I'm going to just change these values until it basically fills, the position that the original cube is in. You can see there's the end of the cube there. A little bit difficult to see. There you go. So let's just change the these values until it matches. You can see that the original cube is actually longer, so not actually central. So let's just move that up here, and then we'll just change the value again. Just check that's in roughly the right position. Yeah, that's not bad. Pretty good. The height is actually too big at the moment, so let's just change that. Bring that down until it just about disappears. There we are. And then you can see the width isn't really right, so we just need to change that value until we get it into roughly the right spot. There we are. It may be very important that the original cube actually pivots from a certain point. If we pivot this one, it's mechanically not going to work as a rig. You can see it's actually pivoting around here, whereas in fact it should actually pivot up here. If I select the original cube and pivot, you can see it's actually pivoting from the right point. So what we want to do is we want to get this primitive here. We want to give it the pivot point of the original cube. So I'm going to go into hierarchy, affect pivot only, and the wonderful thing is that the snap tool works with pivot points. we can actually click on the original cube, and actually I think it's actually selected the same object there. So let's just go into wireframe. Might be slightly difficult to actually spot it, to be honest. And there we are. You can probably catch it down here. So there we go. Click on there, just say OK. And yep, it's put the pivot point into the right position. Come out here, test it, make sure it actually rotates around the right point. Yes, it does. So we can now basically get the original cube and delete it. And let's have a look at. I think the number of fillet segments in there is a bit too high. Let's just put that down a bit. There we are. I think that's not too bad actually. That's pretty good. And what we'll do now is we'll just very quickly replace this bolt. So for that, I'm just going to say shift copy and align to there. Okay, shift copy and align to there. Okay, and then I'm going to get this object, shift copy and align to here. That's cool. And we're just going to rotate it through 180. So, it goes downwards. Just move that up here into position. That's okay, that's fine. And then let's just make the adjustments. It doesn't have to be perfect, This is not really a mathematically perfect sort of engineering or CAD model. This is just meant to look good, basically. So let's move this up. I think we'll do it from here. That's a nice position to go from. And we'll change the radius until it's the right kind of radii. There we go, that's great. Change the height. There we are. Pretty good. We can change the height slightly, actually, till it covers there. Get the original, delete it. It's actually in a better position now. Because of this new bar, the original wasn't actually in the right place. And you can see that this doesn't fill this very well. So we know the pivot point's in the center. So let's just change the height slightly on here. There we are. Just move it down a bit, actually. Need to leave a slight gap. There we are, and does that pretty well. Move this down into position. We just need a slight gap here. And actually, let's say we want a washer here. So let's just move this down slightly. Copy this up here. Copy. And we'll change the number of sides to, let's say 24, because it's a pretty small cylinder. Change the height until it's basically washer size. Change the fillet size, because actually it's way too big at the moment. Put down the number of fillet segments. I think that's fine, because this is very tiny. And then let's just reduce the size of this, the radii. That's roughly this right size. Pop it into position. Change the height till it looks reasonable. I actually think it maybe looks a little bit flimsy there. Let's just make it a little bit bigger. There we are. Go into wireframe. Select the original. Delete that. Let's see, I think we've deleted the original cylinder, have we? No, there it is. Delete that. It's cool. Now let's just go in and replace some of these elements over here. We put this cube here earlier, so let's just resize it as needed. So let me just change the fillet size for a start, make it a little bit tighter, put down the number of segments, change the length till it's the right kind of thickness. There we are. Change the width till it's the right kind of length. These names are all relative in this case, length can be height, width can be thickness, whatever. Let's just put this up here. Let's just change the height till it's the right kind of size. There we are. Let's have a look if we got a specific pivot point here in the original. No, we don't. So we can delete that with impunity. And I actually think, what we'll do is we'll actually get this pivot point. We'll affect the pivot point and we'll say snap it to this tube here. Okay. Now we know it's in the right orientation. All we have to do is move it down here. That's actually in the center of the bar, roughly. Doesn't really necessarily need to be. And now we know that if we rotate that bar, it's going to rotate around the same axis as here, which actually makes sense for the steering mechanism. So we've made it work in a kind of rig sense. And now we just need to replace these bolts and this bar here. So for that, we'll just get this here, shift copy it here. Doesn't really need to be anywhere in particular because we're just going to snap it. Shift copy it here. That's going to form this here. And then we're just going to create a couple of nuts. Copy, copy. And then let's just put these in position very quickly. So let me see. We need 1, 2, 3 cylinders. So we need another cylinder. And then we're just going to snap. Okay. Now this one, we're going to snap to there. Okay. This one here, we're going to snap to here. Okay. And then these, we just need to snap these into position. Bang. There we go. Same here. Bang. That's great. Okay. And then now we're just going to resize things so they're in the right position. So that's actually pretty good position for that. We just need to change the radius slightly. It's the same size as the original bar. I think we can just get rid of the original bar now. And then we can just use the height value until it goes inside here. Let's just change this. There we are. And we'll imagine that that's actually welded into here. That's great. And I'm just going to shift copy this to here. I'm going to align it to here. I'm just going to change the radius until it's very small, like that. There we are. Let's say maybe a little bit smaller. Change the height slightly. There we go. Move it into position. And now we've got a little bolt on there. Let's just change the radius slightly more. And reduce the size of the fillet. We don't need that many fillet segments for that kind of fillet. That's cool. That looks like that holds that on there. I mean, this should actually be maybe a little bit further up to allow that to screw on there, but it's a minor change. And if we wanted to, we could always adjust this to actually allow that to happen. But for now, you know, it doesn't have to be super, super, super accurate. Let's change the radius here. And we'll change the height until it's actually the right size. Yeah, that's looking okay. We'll just get the original and delete it. Just move this down slightly, just a little bit more. It's just a little bit too robust. And change the height. There we are. Change the fillet slightly. And we'll actually just get rid of this. Just copy this down here. Shift copy. There we are. Our work is done there. Select the original, delete that. Now you can actually see now we just need to make this thinner. It actually looks like the right kind of bolt. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So there we are. We've replaced those parts. And we just need to replace this now. So let's have a look in wireframe for where our tube went. It went up here. So we just need to make this the right kind of radius. There we are. And we know that this needs to go all the way down to here and poke at the end. So we can get the original, just delete it, select this, and then just crank up the height value until it's the right kind of size. There we are. Pretty good. Let's just check that out. Yeah, that's... Maybe we make it a little bit rounder on the end there. Let's just change this a little bit more and just increase the number of fillet segments because it's actually quite large. As I said, we don't have a fillets tube, so we'll just leave the tubes as is. Same here. And last thing we'll do before we finish off is just this object down here. And for that, I'm just going to copy pretty much what we have here, really. Let's just see, it's all got the same orientation. Just shift copy that down here. Just say copy. We can either copy or instance it. Probably the easiest thing to do is instance it. Let's just say instancing. Because that means, obviously, if we make any changes to this one will get changed as well. But that has to be borne in mind. If you want to make anything unique here, then you need to uninstance that object just by clicking on this button here. Otherwise, you know, the changes will be universal. And what I'm going to do is, to make this go into the same position as this, I'm going to make a quick hierarchy. I'm just going to select everything. Deselect the parent by using Control. And then I'm going to use the parent tool to make these children of this object. You can see the pivot point is here. So if we snap this to here, we can actually get rid of these objects. We don't need them anymore. Get this object here, snap. As you can see, snaps into position and all the children snap at the same time because they're children of the parent. And we just need to get the original cylinder and delete it. And there we go. we've put the back axle on as well. And, you know, if we wanted to make it a little bit more realistic, we could just move this over here. Actually, these are all children, so the easiest thing to do probably is just, let me think. We could disconnect them, I suppose. There we are. Broken the parenting. Now we can just move that over here. Put that into position, let's say, and then change the height. And that would actually make the axle go all the way through there. But it's a hidden feature, so we don't really need to do that. So let's just put it back where it was. And there we go. We've just added these elements. We've gone in and replaced the original pieces of geometry that I had in there. The very simple pieces of geometry. We've basically done pretty much all of the changes here just using primitives, replacing the original primitives with better versions with chamfering built in. And we also modified these objects using basically modifiers to produce these nice bends that you can see here. And you can see I actually skipped ahead here and did a little bit of mesh editing just to actually neaten up this object. Just to show you that, you know, as I said earlier, primitive modeling isn't the end of the process. And neither is adding modifiers. Once you've added those things, you can then go on and use mesh editing to take the model to another level. So that basically finishes off this section, and we've actually carried out some modeling. So let's move on to the next chapter now, where we'll wrap up this DVD.